What is up, everybody? Before we get started today, we wanted to open the podcast extending our thoughts out to anybody in the UNC community affected by the shooting that occurred on campus Monday afternoon. If you're listening to this podcast, it probably means that you have some kind of affiliation to the school, whether you're currently there now as a student or you're an alum or you're a parent of somebody that went to Carolina or just a fan. It's scary anytime a senseless tragedy hits this close to a place that we all call home. So again, just thoughts out to everybody affected. Shifting to the podcast and why you're tuning in. All right, welcome in to Schoett and Vipp, the first episode of a new podcast this football season, brought to you by Inside Carolina. Co-hosting this, I'm Taylor Vippolis, and I'm joined by my fellow Carolina football letterman and teammate Jeff Schoettmer. Schoettman, it's great to see you. How are you doing today?
Vip, it's a pleasure, man. You've done some tremendous work over the years for Inside Carolina, and I know you're a fan favorite. So hopefully you can help me kind of raise my stock a little bit. I had fun with Ross last year, but I guess he's on to bigger and better things nowadays and moving to Michigan. So I got the blessing to be able to have you as my co-host, and looking forward to it.
It's a funny thing that you say I have to help prop you up when your snap count was probably I don't even know if there's I was gonna say like quadrupled, but that wouldn't even make sense because of
Hey,
how much you played it and how much you did in your time as a Carolina football player. Our on field accolades, you have me beat, so I'm happy to prop you up any way you need.
look, you were a two-sport athlete at Carolina. I don't got that going for me. If everybody didn't know, Vip ran track before he was on the football team. So
Yeah,
two
little
sport ACC athlete.
little known fact, but shot as we get ready for week one, this is a time where teams are running through the mock game scenarios. You remember those times for coaches to get that extra preparation and make it feel like their teams are prepared for every situation that kind of comes their way. You have the walkthroughs, the podcast industry this week. We were no different. I want you to peel back the fourth wall and tell people what happened, much to my chagrin.
Guys, so we recorded this initial podcast Sunday night, and we were trying to get ahead of it so our listeners would have something to listen to Monday morning on the way to work, on their workout, whatever they were doing on their commute. And we get in about an hour of the podcast, and we finish it. And I text Vip, and I was like, "Hey, how long did we record for?" And he's like, "I forgot to hit the record button, bro." So we spent an hour just getting our mock game in, talking about the team and the season. And look, we had
Oh,
to go. We had to go. That was our preseason as well. So hey, look,
oh,
we're here now. I see the live record button on, so we should be good to go.
I can promise you, I will never make that mistake ever again.
Mistakes happen. We just got to correct them, Bit.
Exactly. I went in the film room. I checked the tape, saw what went wrong. We're here to fix it. But we are here this season to talk about Carolina football. Shot the UNC team goes to the ACC championship game last year. They win 9 games for the first time since 2015, where Carolina isn't a program that wins double digit or comes close to winning double digit games. And Mac Brown kind of has this team on that trajectory or has that team feeling that kind of excitement. Where are you kind of at with expectations for this team as we enter this season?
My expectations are high. Anytime you got the returning ACC Player of the Year, a Heisman caliber quarterback, and a potential top two draft pick, I mean, the sky's the limit for this team. Am I saying we're going to win the national championship? No, but I do think we are, one of the three best rosters in the ACC and have a really good chance. And it's up to us as we progress through the season to, get ourselves in that ACC championship game.
Yeah, this team's ceiling is their ceiling for a reason. You mentioned him. It's Drake May. Carolina, for the most part, for over a decade now, has been really fortunate with the quarterbacks that have come through Chapel Hill outside of a couple of years, where you go from TJ Yates to Bryn to Queese to Mitch Trubisky. You have a couple of down years with Brandon Harris. Um, Nathan Elliott, Chaz Surratt, but then you flip it right back with Sam Howell, and Sam Howell felt like he was the best quarterback in school history, and then Drake May played about 2 games and kind of took over that mantle from him. This team, as I mentioned, went to the ACC championship game last year. I thought one of the interesting points that EJ Manuel said on that ACC huddle show was that going to the ACC championship, losing fueled his Florida State team to kind of rebound strong and get back there the next year and kind of finish what they had started. Are you kind of at that level with this team where, for the most part, it's ACC championship game appearance or bust?
So I really want to say it is, and kind of here's the caveat to that. I think there's a way we could go 11-1, lose to Clemson, a tight one, in Clemson, and still not make the ACC championship. I don't know all the rules, all the tiebreakers and stuff, and would I consider that a bust? Us going 11-1, losing to Clemson, and not making the ACC championship or whatever? That's not a bust to me. In my opinion, if we don't win 10 regular season games, that's a bust. I think bare minimum we should be 10-2, and hopefully the cards, fall how they may, and we are in the ACC championship. But I think our roster is too talented, and for us to have another generational quarterback at the helm, like, we gotta win double-digit games. And obviously Florida State and Clemson are talented rosters, but if we can find a way to sneak in the ACC championship game, who knows what can happen.
Yeah, to me, it feels like there's a clear pecking order in the ACC where the top 2 spots, it's some order of Clemson, Florida State, Clemson, and then Carolina, for the most part, seems to have that third spot going into this season with expectations solidified. So I do think in your caveat, if Carolina misses out on going to the ACC championship game because they're 11-1 and that one loss is to Clemson, that's something that I think most fans could stomach and realize that the breaks just didn't go their way. And you kind of have to change your expectations on the fly, where, like last year, people are saying, if you told somebody before the season, would you sign up for 9 wins? Most fans would say yes, but those expectations change pretty quickly when you see that you have the best quarterback in the NCAA, if not the best quarterback, the second best quarterback in the NCAA. And when you're sitting at 9-1, finishing with 9 wins still feels like you left a lot on the table. But when you're looking at this team, you mentioned you think it would be a disappointment if they don't win 10 games. For your season predictions, where would you kind of have this team's floor and where would you kind of have this team's ceiling?
Well, now that we're recording this on Tuesday of game week and Tez Walker is still out, NCAA has not made a ruling, or I guess they haven't countered our counter to see if he can play. Without him, that's a huge loss. He's a true number 1 ACC, Biletnikoff type guy. And without him, the rest of the guys are going to have to pick up the slack. So if Tez Walker doesn't play the season, I'd put our floor at 8-4. I still predict we're going to go 10-2. Honestly, my prediction is Tez Walker is going to get ruled eligible to play. They're going to fly him on a private jet Friday night from Chapel Hill to Charlotte. He's going to walk in with this robe on into the team meeting room, led by the strength coach, AJ Blue, and Simon and Dean, and all those guys are going to be playing rap music. The lights are going to be flickering, and Coach Brown's going to announce that Tez is playing. So if that happens, look out, South Carolina.
The closer we get to game day, if the NCAA rules him eligible, the more it serves as a rallying cry for the team and fueling them as motivation. So if you're telling me Tez Walker gets cleared Saturday morning, I'm taking that every time because of the momentum that kind of comes. But you mentioned it, like, what is the NCAA doing? It's almost like there's no sense of urgency, and we're recording this right before 7:00 on Tuesday night. It's like they don't even know that Carolina has a game on Saturday, and they're like, we'll just get to this when we get to this, for an organization that claims to have the best interests of their student athletes in mind.
I completely agree. It's like they're still on summer vacation. Like, at least come out and say, no, Tez Walker is not playing, because we gave a counter to them ruling him ineligible. So at least acknowledge that. That's just common courtesy. What do I know? But anyway.
Yeah, and I feel for Tez because he's practicing with this level of uncertainty for something that is seemingly out of his control. The rules change after he enrolls there, and he's practicing not knowing if what all the work he's putting in is for naught. And I just feel for him when that's something that it's a situation completely out of his control right now. But when for this Carolina team this year, we kind of mentioned where their floor is, where their ceiling could be. When you're looking at the offense, where would you have Carolina's best offensive unit heading into 2023?
With a common person that knows nothing about Carolina football other than Drake May, they would obviously say quarterback's the strongest position. But since Drake's only one guy and we really have unproven backups behind him, I'm going to go with the tight end unit. Look, Kamari Morales has the most touchdowns by a tight end in Carolina history. He's returning for his 5th year. Bryson Nesbitt, who was this rising superstar last year, this dynamic pass catcher, that everyone thought he was going to be all ACC this year, he's back. And then the story of the offseason is John Copenhaver. John Copenhaver was represented he went to ACC Media Days. To get that honor and not even be a starter the last 2 years is a huge honor. So that shows how good the coaching staff thinks he is. Those three really complement each other. Kamari's kind of can do it all. Bryson's more of the pass catcher, the true 2023 hybrid that you can flex out wide and become a mismatch in the passing game. And Copenhaver, from everything I've heard from the staff, is he does it all. He's tough as hell. He blocks really well. He's smart. He can catch and run after the catch. So those three guys could all start damn near anywhere in the ACC, and we got three guys that could potentially be in the postseason all ACC team. So I'm gonna have to give it to tight ends as our strongest unit.
Yeah, with the exception of Drake May, because you look at his video game like numbers, he's gonna factor into the Heisman race, and we have content to fill out, so we can't just say Drake May and move on. I would agree with you. It's the tight ends, and I think you hit on why it's the tight ends. Not only are they talented, but their abilities to complement each other, where you have Nesbitt as that receiving threat, you have Morales, who has been a great red zone threat. Copenhaver brings in the blocking, and he's grown as a complete tight end. How do you think Carolina can kind of be creative, maybe with different formations or different packages, to where you don't have to look at it as we just have one tight end or we have to pick one of those guys, where maybe we can see packages where there's two tight ends or even three tight ends.
What I'm hoping is, look, Freddie Kitchens is their tight ends coach. He was an NFL head coach. He's been in the NFL for a long time. And what does the NFL do? They run a lot of 2 and 3 tight end packages. So, Freddie should put his foot on the table and say, I got 3 of the best players on our offense. Let's get them in the game and get them in the game together. Obviously, we can put all 3 of them in the game and flex out Bryson Nesbitt out wide into a receiver stance. And this little cornerback's going to have to go cover 6'6" Bryson, who runs as well as most receivers. Look, we can, put them all in the run game and play smash mouth football with Hampton and British Brooks back there. Like, there's so many things we can do, and I want our offensive staff to get creative. Look, I'm excited to see it unfold on Saturday, and I would be disappointed if we don't see at least 2 tight ends in the game 50% of the snaps. That's what I think.
Yeah, that would be a good benchmark, I think, and that was one of the critiques of when Phil Longo was the offensive coordinator, a lack of creativity. And I think you've seen more of that, or the talks have been about more of that, where you have multiple packages for multiple tight ends. They're trying different things out, where they're moving the pocket and shifting Drake May around, and not just making him a stationary target to try to cut back on some of those sack numbers. Also on the depth chart, you see somebody like George Pettaway listed as a slot receiver in addition to him at tailback, where it's like he is such a good athlete. There has to be ways that Carolina can maximize his talent, and that kind of leads me to the question mark of the offense. If the tight ends are the strongest part for this team, where would you have the biggest question?
So I think in the offseason, a lot of people would say receivers is going to be one of our strengths, but I think it's the biggest question mark headed into the season, especially with the news of Tez Walker. When I saw the depth chart drop, and the first thing I noticed was Kobe Paysowers was listed as an or with Nate McCollum. If you know anything about depth charts, you know that the first person listed in an or category, he's the starter. They're just putting the or as, I don't even know the word for it. But, everyone in this offseason was talking about how Nate McCollum is this proven guy in the ACC, but either that's him taking a step back or it's Kobe Paysauer elevating his game in the offseason. But if you look at our returning receiving numbers from last year, the guy that had the most catches was Bryson Nesbitt, who's a tight end. And then you go down the list, Kobe and Gavin Blackwell and Andre Green and JJ Jones, like none of those guys have more than 30 catches. And the problem with me is if Tez Walker can't play the whole year, he's the only true legitimate number one we have. He's the only one that we can say, go flex out there and you can beat any corner in the country. None of those other guys, I don't think, have proven yet that they have the skill set. I'm hoping they do, and Coach Galloway's developed into that. But, a bunch of these guys are 20, 30 catch guys, and none of them have been a true number one. So I'm excited to see who steps up and, who becomes Drake's target. We lose Josh and Antoine, and that's, I don't know, 150 catches between the two. So there's got a lot of production that needs to be, the slack needs to be picked up. So obviously challenging those guys to see who can step up, but that's my biggest question mark heading into the season.
Yeah, I've seen fans kind of say if Tez Walker can't play, then you have to have that like next man up mentality. And while I do agree with that, I think they're also not taking into consideration just how far the drop off is between Tez Walker and whoever that next person up at receiver is, whether it's Gavin Blackwell, JJ Jones, Andre Green Jr. And that's not a knock on any of those young receivers. That's Tez Walker being a Bolitnikoff Award watch list receiver. Carolina this offseason went out and they needed to go out and get wide receivers for Drake May, proven receivers, not like let's go into the season and find out what we have with somebody that had 3 catches. And for both sides, I think that was the best case scenario. One, you don't want to put your receivers in situations that they're not ready for. And you want to get Drake May the best receivers possible because, again, this is all about capitalizing on the window of having the best quarterback in school history. If it wasn't the receivers, I was going to say the offensive line, which is a crazy thing to say when you do have 4 starters back along the offensive line. You bring in somebody like Willie Lampkin, who on the depth chart was listed starting at guard. There's over 137 career snaps or 137 career starts on the offensive line. Where are you kind of at with this offensive line? And for most of the talk of training camp, it's kind of been about them not really living up to expectations of their new offensive line coach.
Well, hopefully that means our defensive line was whooping ass in practice and they finally live up to their potential. Hopefully that's what it means. But you know what? You can't substitute game reps as an offensive lineman, and that's the first number that jumps out to me with our guys is I think every one of the starting 5 is either a senior or they're a graduate student. So, they've experienced a lot of football. Corey Gaynor, who's our center, who makes all the calls and checks and is right in the middle. I think it's his 7th year of college football. He's seen it all. He's damn near older than the GA, I bet.
It's a crazy thing to say, 7th year.
7th year. And, that's, I guess, the new norm in college football. It's either you leave after 2.5 years or you stay for 7. No in between. But starting with him, and I think the guard, the transfer from Coastal Carolina, is going to end up being our best offensive lineman.
Right guard.
Yep. Yeah, right guard. I've heard he doesn't look good coming off the bus, but he's low. He plays like a bulldog. He's got athletic ability. He can move. He's tough. He's got great hand placement, and he just gets the job done. At offensive line, it doesn't matter how it looks as long as you get it done. And if you can create space and allow our stud running backs to find some holes, then, we should be okay. And then, I think the big question mark is going to be left tackle. William Barnes, who has played a bunch of football for Carolina, but obviously not at the left tackle position, but very highly rated kid coming out of high school. And look, it's your time to earn your scholarship, bro. Like, let's go. Block for, you can make yourself some money. If you want to look,
there's going to be a ton of scouts watching this team.
If you protect Drake May, you can work yourself into the top 3 rounds, because every scout, every GM, everyone in the country is going to be watching him every drop back. So you're going to get evaluated better than anyone in the country.
Yeah, you mentioned Willie Lampkin, and I think the biggest thing that I'm going to be watching for as the season kind of goes on is how does his size, or his lack of size at 5'11", how does that look in the ACC? Because I think that is a fair concern, where you're not playing group of 5 football anymore, and you're up against these massive D tackles on a game-to-game basis, and see how that could kind of wear on you. Switching sides, the best unit on defense. I think we're going to be in agreement here on the best defensive unit, especially with your background and your predictions. But where would you say the heart of this Carolina defense is? Where are they at their strongest?
Without a doubt, it's the linebackers. And if you even want to separate it from inside to outside, I'd say the inside is the heart and soul of the defense and damn near the team. Power Echols and Cedric Gray are everything you want in your modern day college linebackers. They're tough. They can blitz. They can tackle. They can cover. They're leaders. They practice hard. They rally the guys around them. I mean, I can't say enough good things. And I'm going to rehash what I said this time last year about Cedric Gray, about him being all ACC after last year. And look what he did. He went first team all ACC, led the conference in tackles, All-American, projected top 2 round pick. So I think shots lock was pretty good last year. And I haven't even gotten into our outside backers, which are Kamen Rucker and Amari Gaynor. I mean, those guys, everyone's been raving about them all camp. Rucker's finally out to his true probably skill set as a pass rusher. Through his first couple of years, he would play 4-eye, 5 technique. We'd bump him into 3. He was kind of playing all over the line just because he's a versatile guy. But now we're really telling him this year to get on the edge, go rush the passer. That's how you make your money. That's how you earn your NIL money, bro, because I know you're getting some. And if we're on the prediction train, my prediction for the outside linebacker room is that between Amari Gaynor and Kamen Rucker, that they're going to have 12 or more sacks, whether it's 8 by Rucker and 4 by Gaynor, or 6 and 6, or whatever it is. I'm predicting 12 sacks out of that room. And if we can get that, then that'll really bolster our defense and allow us to do other things. But best defensive unit, without a doubt, is the linebackers.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you. Power said you have Amari Campbell, who has kind of stepped up into that third linebacker position as a depth guy, where last year Cedric Gray and Power Echols played 95 and 90% of snaps respectively. We know if those two are healthy, Coach Chizik is going to lean heavily on those two guys. And that was a question I kind of had for you. We talk about like Power Echols played 90% of snaps, or Cedric Gray played 95% of snaps. Is that a problem, or like that doesn't seem too far out of the norm for me with how vocal your linebackers are supposed to be and how important they are to the overall success of the defense?
So here's kind of the argument I have. So if you look to the NFL, most of the games are probably 10 to 12 plays less, but the starting linebackers are playing 100% of the snaps, just like the DBs are essentially. They're playing all the snaps. I think in the games that are close, 1 possession, 2 possession games, Power and Ced should play 95% of the snaps. Where we need to give them rest is the games where we can get up 30 points in the third quarter and let the young guys go hunt. So that'll over the course of the season reduce their numbers and take the hits off of them. But If we're playing Clemson on the road, I want Power and Set in there 99% of the snaps. I mean, those are your two best players on defense, your two biggest difference makers. They can handle it. Those guys are as conditioned as anybody. And as a linebacker, you get into the rhythm of the game. When you get taken out of the game, it's you kind of get out of rhythm a little bit. And those guys are in good enough condition that they can play, 90+% of the snaps against when the game is in hand. When the game is out of hand and there's it's a blowout, then yeah, get them out of the game. Let the young guys go play the whole second half.
Yeah, it's definitely more about them playing meaningful snaps versus just not overall the snap numbers. And I think one thing we should probably emphasize is a lot of Carolina fans could look at the overall defensive numbers and kind of dismiss the defense as a whole when they're last in the ACC in total defense, last in the ACC in scoring defense, last in sacks. But I think I don't want to undersell the importance or just how good somebody like Cedric Gray is, where if you take him off that defense, they become essentially unwatchable.
Here, I got one more point to that, and thank you for allowing me to speak up, Vip. All right, I'm sure a lot of people that listen to this podcast watched the Carolina Panthers when Luke Kuechly and Thomas Davis were playing. Imagine a game that's in, say it's a one possession game and they're playing the New Orleans Saints, and there's a series in the third quarter where Luke Kuechly or Thomas Davis is on the sideline. The whole stadium would go nuts. Like that's what we have. I'm not saying Power and Set or Luke and Thomas Davis, but those guys should never come off the field. So we shouldn't have a problem with them playing, 90+% of the snaps all year. So that's all I'm going to say about that.
So if these guys are the strength of the defense and the heart of the defense, where would you, the flip side of that, where's the biggest question mark for this team?
To me, the biggest question is the DBs. Many people could say the D line, but we've recruited too well, and there's too much talent there for them to finally not come around. And I got faith in those guys and Coach Chiswick to finally pull out the best of those guys. Like Miles Murphy, I think he can have an All ACC year. But let's switch to the DBs for a second. To me, I think they're the most unproven, even though you have guys like Don Chapman and Gio Biggers who have played probably 1,500 snaps plus in their career. I just don't think they have the top end talent, so they're a little unproven in terms of I don't think that they can perform up to 11-1 defense. I don't want to speak bad. Those guys are great players, but I think at the end of the year, I think maybe Will Hardy and Stick Lane are the two starting safeties. After the first depth chart, I think Chapman and Biggers were listed as the starters, but I think as the year goes on, I think we might see Hardy and Stick Lane kind of outplay them. And then obviously you switch over to the cornerback position. I think Elijah Huzzy, I mean, he had 30 career starts at his old school, so he's proven, and he's got a little chip on his shoulder, coming from FCS to FBS. But the other cornerback, Marcus Allen, has only started 2 times in his career. So that's to be in the ACC and us to win the ACC championship, and that's what we're expecting. That's a tough ask, and so that's why I'm just saying they're unproven. The two safeties and one of the cornerback positions that I'm like, I think our strength is the D line and the linebackers.
If you talk to anybody around the Carolina football program, one of the first names they'll mention from this offseason has been Elijah Huzzy, and he's a name that they think that all Carolina fans should know coming up a level and hopefully being that number one true shutdown corner that Carolina seemingly hasn't had in quite some time. Trying to think back the last time they had a true number one type corner, it would probably be when
MJ Stewart.
Yeah, MJ,
and he played a lot of nickelback that year.
Even Dez. I don't know if Carolina's had one cornerback, let alone two that kind of rivaled Dez Lawrence and MJ Stewart. For me, I'll play devil's advocate. It's the defensive line. They have 16 sacks in the regular season last year, dead last by a considerable margin, almost an unfathomable number of sacks to get over the course of a regular season. They bring in Ted Monachino from the NFL, and he has a ton of experience working with some of the best NFL pass rushers. You mentioned it. They've recruited too well along the defensive line, where it's like either these players we completely missed the mark on evaluation, which is seemingly hard to do because it's not like we were recruiting against group of five schools. We're recruiting with Clemson, Alabama, Georgia's. Like, not, I don't think all those schools missed that much on the evaluations. So it's like at this point the D line has to perform, and if that D line can be good, it kind of takes off some of that pressure off the secondary where you do have um, maybe not the strength that you do recruiting ranking wise that you do have along the defensive line. But when you have people first guys off the bus, guys like Des Evans, Miles Murphy, Javari Ritzy,
Ritzy, Kevin
like,
Hester looks like
yeah,
an NFL 3 technique. I mean,
you get
Travis Shaw,
Tamari Fox
Tamari
back.
Fox.
Yeah. So for me, this is the time that the defensive line kind of has to step up. But when we're talking about Carolina football, the fans, every fan rightfully is worried about that defense. They see the numbers last year. They see that we've had two defensive coordinators in a few seasons since Mac Brown has been back. They're changing out position coaches. They're bringing in analysts. Why should the Carolina fan, as we get ready for the South Carolina game on Saturday, be optimistic around this defense?
Yeah, I think it starts with, obviously we talked about it, how well we've recruited on the D line. Like, it's time for them to finally show up. If you look at Clemson for the last 10 years, how many D linemen have they had that have gone to the NFL and been successful? That number compared to how many linebackers they've had go to the NFL is insane. Like, it's all the D linemen and none of the linebackers. So it shows how big of an impact these D linemen can have on the game. They are so close to the quarterback. They can affect the pass game and the run game almost more than anyone in college football. I mean, they can more than anyone on the defense, obviously. But I think behind quarterback, they're the number one most important thing that you need to have in college football. So I think if we can harness their talent and get them going, that's a huge win for us. I mean, we already have two proven commodities at linebacker. You don't have to worry about those guys. Those are plug and play. Just go do your thing. Don't mess it up. And they're all ACC selections. And then obviously I said the secondary, I think, is the biggest question mark, but I think there's more cohesiveness in that unit. Jason Jones reunites with Charlton Warren. They were both together at Indiana. So hopefully they can clean up some of the mental errors that we had last year. But, I was looking at TCU last year. They went to the national championship game and their defense averaged about 25 points a game. If our defense can get to that level, drop 5 or 6 points a game, put us in top 50, 60 in the country, then we should win 10 games minimum. Obviously, let up 25 a game. I'm expecting our offense to score 35 a game. We get a lot more, turnovers, and we get sacks. Our defense can look pretty good.
When you were on the Carolina defense going into the 2015 season, the 2014 season, defensively
awful,
horrific,
awful. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but there was a lot of miscommunication.
Yeah, it just was not good. Any sense of the imagination, that defense was not good. What was it like for you going into the 2015 season where you knew you were paired with an offense that could roll out of bed and score 40 and 50 points, and that for the team to have success, it was really on the defense and getting those timely kind of stops?
And here's the good part for us in that year. We knew our offense was going to score. So when our offense, all we have to do is get a couple of stops and turnovers. Our offense scores, they're up 14-0. So what does the opposing offense have to do? Well, they have to throw the ball. So what we were really good at that year was playing pass defense. All week in practice, we would do pattern matching and all these different pass concepts where we were really good. We knew exactly where to be in the pass game. I think we had 15 plus interceptions that year, which was top 10 in the country. We played, timely defense. Situational awareness. We were good. We got turnovers. We were a good second half defense. So, I mean, granted, we weren't good against the run, but like the things that we were good at, we were really good at. And I think that's kind of what our defense has to, the mantra they have to adopt this year is they weren't good at anything last year. They didn't hang their hat on turnovers. They didn't hang their hat on rush defense, pass defense. All of it was garbage. So I think to take the baby steps to get better as a defense is find 2 or 3 things that you're going to be really good at, whether that's pass rushing, run defense, pass defense. Like you got to excel in something, and that's what I'm hoping our team and our defensive staff kind of figures out and channels, because we were just average to below average to the worst in the country at every category. So that's got to get fixed.
Yeah, fans would love to see that. Defensively, offensively, one of the things that they're kind of looking out for this season is a more balanced attack and not going into every week basically begging Drake May to save you and be the one who determines whether Carolina wins or loses. They bring in a new offensive coordinator, Chip Lindsey, Randy Clement comes, and the talk this offseason has been about having more of an emphasis running the ball. It's one thing to run the ball when you want to run the ball, but when the other team knows you're going to run the ball, you still have to be able to run the ball. And I think that's why Carolina has really struggled in the red zone, and they're looking to clean that up last season. What do you think that run game looks like, especially when you look at a very crowded backfield with British Brooks, George Pettaway, Omari
Marion
Hampton,
Hampton,
Elijah Green, Caleb Hood?
Caleb
Like
Hood.
there are a ton of names. And how do you kind of see this shaking out?
So I think obviously the depth chart's been released, but the 2 most talented and proven guys are British and Hampton. I think those guys, it's going to be the 1-2 punch. And obviously we have, Caleb and Elijah, who have played really well for us at times, who can come in and spell those guys, when needed. But I think Brooks and Hampton deserve most of the carries. And what I want to see is us consistently run the ball well more in terms of, last year we would have runs of 1, 2, 4, -1, and then we'd pop a 50-yarder, and so that skews the average. That our average becomes a lot higher than it looks because you pop that 150-yard run. I want to see us consistently getting 5, 6, 7 yards of rush and knocking defensive linemen off the ball, creating holes for the running backs to fill, and kind of doing that way. I think of 2 specific examples for me. One was the dreaded 2021 Georgia Tech game where we lose at Georgia Tech. I remember we have a series where it's 2nd and 1. We run the ball. We don't get a yard. We get tackled for no gain. 3rd and 1, same thing, TFL. And then we go for it on 4th and 1, and we run 3 straight times and can't get a yard. And that was the most frustrating thing for me because I know how hard that is as a defensive player is to stop a 1-yard gain. That's so hard to do it 3 times in a row in the middle of the field. And that was a product of our play calling, our offensive line, just so much issues. And so what I want to see is instead of the trunk plays, which are great, I want to see us consistently being able to line up in 12 personnel or 11 personnel, run inside zone, 3 straight plays, and get 5, 6, 7 yards a pop.
Yeah, I think that's something a lot of people want to see, that element of toughness and being able to run the ball when everybody knows you're going to run the ball, and having the confidence in your guys to get 2 yards, 3 yards consistently when you need it. And that should help Carolina close out games and kind of put teams away with that separation and with having a quarterback and with having the playmakers that Carolina does have. But to close out the podcast, I want to shift our focus to this Saturday. We're playing South Carolina in Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte. I want you to put your coach hat on for a second. Tez Walker, we still don't have an update on him. How would you handle the Tez Walker situation as you go into game week, since he's still been running with the ones with the hope that the NCAA rules on his side with his appeal?
So kind of how a college practice works is, there's indie periods, there's 7-on periods, and then there's like the scout team periods once you get into the game week. I think we should allow Tez, obviously he's going to do indie drills with the receivers. I'd allow him to get some 7-on reps, but once the team period comes around where they're, running plays against the scouts, that he's not in there. It's Tuesday of game week. He's not eligible, so let's not waste our time with him. I think this week we could see, like we talked about earlier in the podcast, more 12 personnel, more 13 personnel. Maybe Bryson Nesbitt flexed out as a wide receiver some. But at this point, you can't give valuable reps to Tez because you got other guys, especially unproven guys, to get reps for.
Yeah, that chemistry with Drake is something that they're going to have to hope matriculates during the week, and something that they have to hope they see during this week. And I think you're 100% right, where you can't really give Tez Walker that many team reps. One, because you need those guys up to speed, and two, I don't think you could give him those reps because you almost have to plan for him not to play at this point. And if it is a great surprise and he's able to play on Saturday, he's had enough reps and he's a good enough receiver, a great enough receiver, to where not having, team reps on the Tuesday or Wednesday in the lead up to the game won't make as much of an impact as not getting some of those younger guys those meaningful reps. Looking at this game from a betting angle, UNC is -2.5. I have to admit, I was surprised seeing that with South Carolina winning 7 of the last 9 meetings. How much stock would you put into the last 2 times these teams played, where South Carolina wins the Mayo Bowl by 17 as an 11-point underdog and just ran Carolina off the field?
I think Coach Brown and Coach Beamer put more stock into that game than the players. I think the roster has had a lot of turnover. South Carolina started a Wildcat quarterback who's, I think, now a receiver, and Drake wasn't starting. But I think it's Coach Brown has vengeance out to get Coach Beamer, because that was, his first season as a head coach, and he embarrassed him in the bowl game when they're big underdogs. But, I think this game is more about, Drake leading his team, coming, obviously he came back, he had to, but he's playing in his hometown in front of his family for the flagship school in the state in Charlotte against a huge SEC opponent. And this is everything the May family and Drake dreamed of since he was 4 years old. This is like, you couldn't write a better script to start a season. And then hopefully we finish it in Charlotte as well. But I mean, this is the Drake May show, and it's going to be the Drake May show all year. And, look, if Tez Walker plays, I think UNC is going to win the game. So that's kind of my prediction. And you heard my prediction earlier in the podcast, where I think Tez is going to, get cleared, and we're going to be guns blazing. But we'll see.
Yeah, my biggest worry with this game, if I had to predict this game, and fans will hear it probably more in depth on the roundtable prediction show that Inside Carolina does. But I'm basically in the camp where I have to see the Carolina defense be good before I can believe that they're actually good. And I know South Carolina only returns 10 starters this year, and I don't think Spencer Rattler is a great quarterback, but he was a good enough quarterback last year to finish the season with a win versus number 5 Tennessee. Then they go on the road at Clemson and beat number 7, or they go on the road to Clemson and beat number 7 Clemson. And then in the bowl game against Notre Dame, they go toe to toe and get in a shootout and lose by 1 score. But with what South Carolina has, I do think they have enough pieces. They have a good coaching staff. They have the advantage of being in those big games where you're looking around for Carolina's signature win, and there isn't beating a number 7 team. There isn't beating a 5 team, let alone doing that in back-to-back weeks. But playing devil's advocate to myself, Carolina has Drake May. And when you have Drake May, it feels like you're going to be in every game. So if Carolina was to win this game, let's say we're talking about this podcast, people are listening to our show when it normally comes out on Monday and not when it comes out this Wednesday, because I forgot to press record. what were the keys to the game, and how did Carolina get over the finish line and come back to Chapel Hill with a win?
Yeah, I think, especially in these opening games, I think more of these games are lost rather than they're won. And I think the three things that we're going to see are penalties, turnovers, and special teams play. Yeah, I'm putting on my coach hat and having this coach speak, but penalties are a huge key to the game, especially in these openers when we haven't, there haven't been live bullets. There's obviously referees at practice and they track penalties and whatnot, but when you're going against a different opponent, it's Saturday night, college game day, you never know what can happen. I think Drake May has done a great job of protecting the ball. He had a little bit of fumble issues last year, but I think whatever team wins the turnover battle will probably win the game because they're pretty evenly matched teams. And then special teams play. Uh, Shane Beamer has been known to, have some tricks up his sleeves on special teams. I looked at a stat today that the punter for South Carolina has thrown the ball four times. He threw the ball 4 times last year and had 2 touchdowns.
It's Beamer
So
ball.
So Coach Brown, I know he's got those boys on high alert for fakes and tricks and everything else, but I think we finally have a field goal kicker that can make clutch kicks and be very reliable because you need that in opening game. Ryan Coe was 19 of 23 at Cincinnati, played in the college playoff, played some big time football. So I got faith in that guy. And hopefully our defense can get some turnovers. They weren't able to make turnovers last year. So I think those are my 3 keys to the games. If we can beat them in the penalty battle, the turnover battle, and then, have sound special teams and not let up a 60-yard kickoff or a fake field goal or stuff like that, then I think we'll be in a good position to win this game.
Yeah, special teams is such a forgotten phase of football to just the average fan. Not only with the 4 teams, but your kicking game. When we played, we saw some not good kickers. When you coached, we saw some not good kickers. Carolina has kind of had either a really reliable kicker or somebody that you can't really count on. So when we had somebody like Nick Weiler, how beneficial do you think that was to our overall team success and that mindset of like, hey, if this guy's out on the field, like we don't have to worry about it.
Absolutely. Shout out to Nick Weiler, Tomahawk Chop. We appreciate you, brother.
Still has never bought a drink in Tallahassee or in Gainesville.
Yeah,
He's a legend.
Nick's a legend. I mean, Casey Barth before that, Connor Barth. I mean, we've had a bunch of good kickers, but it definitely helps the morale of the team when, let's say, our offense drives 80 yards the length of the field, and for whatever reason we get stopped and we gotta kick a field goal on the 10-yard line. To come away with points is just, it's a breath of fresh air, and the morale is lifted. If you're constantly worrying about if our kicker can make a 35-yarder consistently, then that's no good because then you're constantly having to go for it more and more on 4th down. But I'm a big fan of Coach Brown being aggressive, especially with Drake May at quarterback, of when it's 4th and 4, let's go for it. Drake's so valuable with his arm or his legs. He's so tall, he sees over everybody that I want the ball in the key moments in Drake's hands. I kind of diverted from kicking to Drake on 4th down, but anyway, go ahead, Vipp. Take the floor.
I think you hit on it perfectly. Coming away with 0 points on those long drives is just a demoralizing aspect of the game, and having that kicker that you can kind of have that confidence and the ability to go out there and win you a game. You don't want to have a kicker where it's like, oh no, like I have no idea what's about to happen when he puts that boot to that football. And when you have somebody like Nick Weiler or like Carolina's hoping that they have with the Cincinnati transfer, is that confidence in them to execute that 3rd phase of football. You had the coaching hat on. I want you to put the betting cap back on to finish the podcast. Carolina's win total this season is 8.5. You've mentioned the floor. You've mentioned the ceiling. Push comes to shove. What are you doing with that 8.5?
So I had, shots lock of the year last year. It was lock of the century when it was UNC versus App State, and I think I made the prediction that UNC -1 was the lock of the century, and thank God that hit. My shots lock of the century, lock of the year is going to be
Can you have
UNC.
2 locks of the century?
Yeah, I guess. Why not?
Okay. Maybe a
All right,
lock of
let's
the
just
decade.
go lock of the year. Lock of the year is UNC over 8.5 wins. I think Drake May at the helm. There's no way we're getting less than 9 wins. We had 9 wins last year. That's kind of our floor. Drake, the story was already written. This is like going to be etched in Carolina football history. Like he's such that May family name is so they're forever. I don't know. We love them so much that Drake's going to do great things just like Luke did, and he's going to lead our team to at least 9 wins this year, and help all the degenerate gamblers collect their money at the end of the year if they lock the 8.5 over.
We will see how that plays out. We'll see if Carolina could get one this Saturday against South Carolina. 7:30 kick. Pretty sure it's the ESPN ABC big game. I will be there in Charlotte. I'm excited to be there. Me and Jeff will be back next week. Hope you enjoyed listening to Shot and Vip. Appreciate everybody who has listened or watched. And Jeff, appreciate the time, man.
Always a pleasure, Vip. It's going to be a fun year.